As human beings, we experience every second of our existence through our senses. 5 wonderfully basic gifts that compel us to explore new sights, to hear new sounds, to smell and taste the sublime. These senses of ours thrive on a perpetual stream of information, creating a constant thirst for new discoveries. They define life as we know it, and in doing so, they fuel the intangible.
I have to describe it to people. I describe it as platformless gaming, sort of accepting the idea that gaming and play can happen anywhere, in any context, with any device. And that once you sort of embrace that idea, it adjusts the way you see playfulness as your social role. So gaming that doesn't have any, like, this is the acceptable place to have gaming and this is an unacceptable place.
I actually tend to focus on the story and talk about how it's a story that's broken up into pieces that you can find anywhere and that it's your story.
Welcome. It is TGI Friday, the last of the month, where we hang out and reminisce about the last month and look forward to what may lie ahead and chat about fun topics because it's Friday night and it's during a worldwide pandemic. If you are watching this live, thanks for tuning in and pay attention for details about a special giveaway during the event. And if you're watching later, thanks for tuning in, and check the description for links and notes from our Hangout. And don't forget to boop the like button and let me know you enjoyed this if you did. And also, please do share a comment below. I love hearing from you. Tonight, I've invited an old friend of mine to come by so we can chat about 2 of my favorite topics. And his specialty is something called alternate reality games, or at least they were. Maybe still are, but that's a point of contention. He runs ARGN.com, and it's a hub for all things ARG. And that's Michael J. Andersen, or M. Janderson for short. Hello, Michael. How are you?
Hey, Jeff. Saying reminiscing is going to be true because we go back a while in both of these spaces.
Oh, man. Yeah, such a history. It's like it's already 20 years, more than 20 years actually, if you think about it.
Yeah,
but that's
the Beasts just hit their 20-year anniversary. Couple geocaching things hit 20-year anniversaries and then some. One of the things we'll probably be talking about later is I haven't done a ton of geocaching, but during a lot of the ARG events that we've been to in the past, you've always made sure the ARG folk go out and hit the caches. So, yes, I can say that I haven't done many, but I have done a 20-year-old cache.
Yep. I made sure during those events, let's go caching. Let's get some people out. Yeah. So, just as an intro, we're doing kind of a mashup of alternate reality games and geocaching. And for people who are tuning in who are not geocachers or who have never heard of geocaching, it's an outdoor hobby. It's kind of like a scavenger hunt. Some people call it a treasure hunt, where we make use of GPS. And it's been around since 2000, the year 2000. And that was in May when the US government turned off selective availability, which allowed consumer devices to be able to use accurate GPS readings. And the day after that happened was when the first person went out and hit a bucket with some stuff outside of a road out in the country outside Seattle, and then published the GPS coordinates on a Usenet group. This is like long before internet forums, and on Usenet, and then basically that started the whole hobby of this GPS-based scavenger hunt. And I like to think that geocaching is kind of a granddaddy to alternate reality games when it comes to location-based, like going to GPS locations and finding things, because it was there on day 2. So Michael here, I've described geocaching. Can you describe briefly-ish what an alternate reality game is for geocaching viewers?
Yeah, absolutely. So with alternate reality games, what you're dealing with is it's focused on telling a story and having that story cross over across different platforms, different areas of storytelling. So one of the reasons why there is such a strong intersection between alternate reality games and geocaching is because sometimes you might have a story where you need to go to specific locations to find the information to have it unfold. Mm-hmm. And then specific to alternate reality games, you then have the next step of not only is this a story taking place across different medium, different channels, different places, but it's also one where the players, the people who are engaged with it, either can change the direction of the story based on their actions, or the story is constructed in such a way that even if they can't actually change it, they feel like they have the potential of changing it. So long story short, it's LARPing, where you're playing a version of yourself who's really gullible and believes everything's happening.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And one of the things that I loved about alternate reality games, like I just mentioned, is that it takes place in the real world. So it's very location oriented, whether it's like at an event or scattered around the world at times. And we're going to be mentioning quite a number of alternate reality games that actually made use of worldwide events and locations and Deaddrops, kind of the real treasure hunt of non-geocaching. So yeah, I mentioned it's kind of a contentious thing, the name, because another name that's kind of a wider name that was more accepted for a little bit is transmedia storytelling, which personally I thought that was kind of a nice name because it more incorporated the whole story aspect and the use of multiple media in order to tell that story. And the intro kind of touched on that a little bit as well, like the breaking up of a story and the discovering it over time by the people who are playing the game, as it were.
Yeah, well, and I think that's actually something that alternate reality games share with geocaching, because yes, geocaching is a term that gets used for the space, but you've also got, and I'm going to completely screw this up, was it Munzie? Money? That
Munzie,
there are related constellation areas for geocaching where it's the same concept, different varieties and blends with it, where right now in alternate reality gaming, one of the other umbrella terms that people are playing around with in addition to alternate reality game is unfiction, as a way of describing stories that play around with the borders of reality and fiction, which to me is less interesting, exciting than the ARG geocaching intersect, but it's one of those avenues that people play up in terms of the border between the two.
Yeah, and there is the option in geocaching for more storytelling as well, because a lot of people will, at geocache, you got coordinates and you go and find a container, but some people will develop a story or a narrative around that you either have to solve a puzzle, or there might be a theme, or you learn about something about a location in order to determine where the container is. So there is that kind of flexibility in order to be creative in how you get people to find a geocache. And that was one of the draws that got me into it. Going to mention very shortly one of the an ARG, I think one of the only, or at least the biggest ARG that took place within the geocaching realm. But first of all, want to reiterate that there is going to be a giveaway later in this episode, in this show, for a book called Planning Your Escape. This is by an ARGer, Laura E. Hall, and Michael's got one there. She is an author and has been doing a whole lot of really awesome writing in this space. And this write-up from Simon & Schuster kind of focuses on the whole escape room aspect, but it does dive into a lot of puzzling and the history of puzzles. I'm sure you can describe it a little better than I can, Michael. You've got the book.
Yeah, absolutely. And by way of background, I work at, for my day job, I work at Tiller Press, which is the imprint that's publishing this book. And one of the cool things for me as I was reading through this as an enthusiast was going through, and it starts out and presents a history of the immersive, location-specific puzzling type that goes back well beyond the 2000 stuff that we're talking about and goes into 1800s and before. So it sets the stage of how did we get to this world where we've got escape rooms, geocaching, alternate reality games, immersive theater. And then for the back half of the book, it's really diving into those questions of how do you get a group together to tackle one of these challenges? What are the types of puzzles that you would encounter for areas that are very focused on the physicality and areas where you can manipulate things with your hands? Mm-hmm. And then if you like that a lot, finishing that up with, and how can you build this stuff yourself? And what are some design considerations if you wanted to do it? So the grand sales pitch of this is a wonderful book to first hit you with the history of it, but then get you into the practicalities of, no, how do you actually dive into this as a hobby, both as a player enthusiast and then transitioning into a creator yourself. Wonderful book that I can't endorse enough, even though I work for the imprint that's putting it out, so I can easily endorse it enough.
Awesome. Yeah, so if you are watching and you see that little ticker in the bottom, live chat giveaway for people who are watching, there is your instructions, and later on in the show we'll do a draw, and one of you can win a copy of this book. So yeah, take a look at that and check it out. I'm very curious about it now as well, because escape rooms are another thing that are super popular these days.
And they are opening up again.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Slowly, but eventually. Yep. So one of the biggest intersections that I mentioned that I love between ARGs and geocaching is that whole aspect of dead drops. Geocaches are a kind of perpetual dead drop. They'll stay there and they'll remain there for more and more people to find. But alternate reality games made use of those excessively as soon as the ability was there, because with phones with GPS now and all this happening after 2000, this is kind of like the heyday of alternate reality games as well. Like the first decade or so, everyone was creating these things and making use of GPS. I mean, it's the crossover between technology and real world. And now anybody who has a smartphone or something with GPS can make use of that. And so when I first started geocaching, that first campaign that I looked up was for the Ape Cache, Project Ape. And that happened before I started geocaching, because I started in 2009 and Project Ape was in 2001. And I think Groundspeak headquarters was trying to get in on this new trend of promotional location-based stuff as well. And so that was the origin of Project Ape. It was all to promote the Planet of the Apes movie. And were you ever a part of that? Did you ever follow that or know about it when it happened?
No, that was another one that was a bit before my time that actually, and this is a perfect transition, both of us kind of got our entry into the alternate reality gaming space, as well as tangentially the geocaching space, through a game called I Love Bees, which was done to promote Halo 2. So for a lot of the deep history of, as both of us talk about, both geocaching and alternate reality games, Jeff and I are the new guys on the block that are no longer the new guys on the block. With Halo 2, with I Love Bees, though, the thing that locked me into this is, oh my goodness, this was an amazing experience, is they took this 6-hour-long plus audio drama, chopped it up, and then distributed it to players through hundreds and hundreds of payphone calls across the country. I actually got to experience this through the guide that Jeff put together of assembling these into something legible that makes sense. So Jeff, can you give a little bit more details on that actual payphone side of things with I Love Bees?
This is like my baby. I love this thing so much, like, because I was very much into Halo when this first happened. So I was frequenting a number of other websites, gaming websites for Halo and Xbox and stuff, and that was what brought me into alternate reality games, because one of those websites announced the what we call the rabbit hole, the entrance into the ARG, which was a Halo game trailer, and at the end of that trailer, the website ilovebees.com popped up and disappeared in a matter of about a half a second. And if you blinked, you'd miss it. But people caught it, and it got into the news, and everybody went to this website. What the heck is this website? It's like a website about some beekeeper and something weird going on with her website, and so it was a mystery. But digging deeper and tied into ARGN.com, the previous owner, Steve Peters, he received mail, which was a honey bottle, a honey jar with, like, you know, the classic bear bottle with honey in the yellow top and everything. But inside that bear bottle were a whole bunch of letters that he eventually figured out, when rearranged, spelled "I love bees." So there's this odd connection, but in a sense that this was 2004. This was 17 years ago, man. Another cross section. So they got the gaming community and the alternate reality gaming community, and brought them together with I Love Bees. But as you're saying, the whole, as the story went on, so more was discovered about that. There'll be links in the description so you can learn more about it if you want to. We eventually discovered that they were releasing GPS coordinates, and those GPS coordinates, nobody knew what they were for when it first came up. Right? It was a mystery. It was just a whole bunch of GPS. When people started going to those GPS coordinates, now that they could with smartphones, eventually they determined that the commonality between all these coordinates was a payphone. Like, what the heck? Like, all of the coordinates led to payphones. And then one day, eventually, those payphones started ringing. And this is just something absolutely, no one had done something like this before. So, like, going to a random payphone, sometimes in the middle of nowhere, and waiting for a specific time at those GPS coordinates, and getting a phone call was like, it was huge. And when the Halo community got involved with that, I mean, then it blew up. But yeah, the storyline behind that was that an AI from the future encountered a space-time anomaly, very Star Trek-y, but popped down into our timeline in 2004 and was basically stuck on our internet. And so she was trying to reorient herself, and in doing so was kind of creating a brain out of those payphones. We call them axons. If you look up what an axon is, it's like a brain term for all the stuff that is happening in your brain. So she's lighting up these axons, trying to create a network and restore herself. And so that was it. She was reaching out to people through these payphones. And in doing so, little bits of surveillance audio clips would be revealed with every answer. And these payphones were mostly in the US, but some of them were in other countries where they allowed incoming phone calls. And unfortunately, I think there was only one maybe in Canada, because Bell owns all of our payphones, so they couldn't get anything. And so being stuck just over the border in Canada, I really wanted to get to one of these payphones, but couldn't at the time. So I helped coordinate all of these short 20, 30-second audio clips to rebuild the structure of the narrative. And that was the audio story that you mentioned, the future story that we were hearing in 2004. And over time, eventually, that we realized that was kind of happening in parallel with the ARG in our time, and it kind of synced up into the big climax. So all the stuff that was happening up there was happening at the same time down here, and the big climax was leading up to Halo 2's release, or the discovery of Earth by the Covenant. So it was so awesome, and I get goose pimples whenever I think about it.
Yeah, no, it was absolutely a thing that stuck through, and mentally I just keep going back to it all the time. One of the things you mentioned there is actually, and a couple times during this talk, we're going to be going back to, let's compare and contrast ARGs and geocaching. With this game in particular, with I Love Bees, it started with a bottle of honey mailed with like Scrabble tiles inside to spell out I Love Bees. Geocaching, a lot of times you are centered on, in order to start the experience, you go to geocaching.org. There is a page that will tell you where to go, how to start. With alternate reality games, it becomes a lot more open-ended in terms of what starting looks like. where the t-shirt that I'm wearing right now is, and I apologize, it's impossible to see right now, is the start of the first alternate reality game experience, The Beast for AI. And it was literally just in the trailer of that show, you had sentient machine therapist Janine Sala. And people, as they were watching the trailers, this was kind of like the Jurassic Park moment of, oh my goodness, there's a dinosaur wrangler in it. But people were curious, who the heck is Janine Sala? And digging into that question of who is Janine opened up this entire expansive story about artificial intelligence and really getting into ethics for that. But that idea of the trailhead of how are you finding your way into the experience is very different. And it's a very different across every alternate reality game, where what that looks like is completely different every time. One of the things that we're going to be talking about a little bit more later is right now in Nashville, there's a bunch of people who are running around because there were posters put up within the city that had those little tear pads with GPS coordinates that led to not a geocache cache, but a cache-like experience where you're picking up a business card that tells you the website that's at the center of this experience. But this is something where it kind of started in the real world and then led to online afterwards.
Right. And Gloria said, in another 10 years, we'll have to explain what payphones are. There's memes that go around.
Yeah, this is the wonderful thing of having your mother joining the stream. Mom, I've got bad news for you. We already need to do those explanations.
Well, actually, in geocaching, there's a lot of people who hide caches in those payphones now.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. Yeah, you drive by, it's like, it's a payphone! And there's got to be a cache there.
Yeah, Adrian Hahn, who did one of the big alternate reality games called Perplexity, experimented with writing SCP Foundation stories. And for those of you who are not aware, SCP Foundation is basically a collective horror story that plays out online, where the focus of those stories are you are seeing a bureaucratic organization's internal memos talking about what the heck's going on. And Adrian Hahn's contribution to the SCP Foundation was talking about what those strange payphone things in New York are actually about.
Yeah, this kind of creative storytelling is definitely very prominent now. Like, it was very niche back in the early 2000s. And I think what happened was it really built a community, but it was a very core community. And people were trying to figure out ways of reaching out to more people. And, you know, for things promotionals like Halo 2 and the movie AI and whatnot, like they had a huge fan base, but these kind of promotions were so focused and small. And part of the trick was trying to figure out how to spread word and enlarge that fan base. Even 9 Inch Nails, they got in on it as well. They delivered USBs, it was exclusive audio tracks, like music tracks, right? I think on the USBs with their campaign.
Yeah, it was USBs that had leaks of the songs, but if you did a spectrogram analysis of those audio tracks, it also had images and a phone number.
Right, yeah.
And got even creepier. Although the creepiest part about the 9 Inch Nails experience, looking back now, is, oh my goodness, somebody took a USB they found in the background at the bathroom of a concert, and they plugged it into their computer.
You never know what you might find on that USB, good or bad. I'm trying to see if I can find a picture of the classic. The imagery that they used. Yeah. Here we go. The 9 Inch Nails ARG. The image that you would see is this kind of a really big, creepy... there we go. The hand reaching down from the sky. And that is something, if you put the image of the audio through the spectrogram, that's the picture you would see. Like, it's just creepy. That's their Year Zero album. And I wonder if There's a picture of the actual spectrogram. Yeah. So there's the kind of image that you would see. And I mean, imagine looking at an image of the audio and seeing that. Now there are puzzles, like geocaching puzzles I've seen, that they take audio and hide like tones in the audio, or something where if you were to play the spectrogram back, you would see a picture or a code or something like that. But seeing, like, encoding an actual image in the spectrogram of an audio file, like that's another level.
Yeah, a recent alternate reality game was actually with Resident Evil Village coming out. They did this 7-day experience where you are compiling journal entries leading up to the release of the game. And the first puzzle, which absolutely blew my mind, was another one of those spectrogram puzzles. But what it did is it took a photograph of the page of the book that was missing, scrambled the order of it in the spectrogram, and then when you rearranged that audio photo of a book in the right order, you'd see in the bottom right corner there is a website that you could go to for a better quality picture of that page you were trying to recover, which I had no idea you could get that high fidelity in terms of spectrograms, where you could have full-on, like, detailed tapestry level pictures coming through.
Yeah, and I think the software for that has got better as well, because you need to have a very high, like a high frequency or bit rate or something on the audio, so that you don't lose it in the compression, so you can get sharp images. And it's like it. When people started doing that for puzzles, I was like, oh, this is just nuts. This is you could do anything for puzzles.
Yeah, I tried testing pulling it through Audacity at first, and I was like, oh, I'm not using the right tool this time.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, Audacity, wonderful audio editing program. It will solve 90% of your audio ARG puzzles. It was that one was a 10%er.
And then, so now also in geocaching, we've kind of got another side game, which has started just a couple years ago, called Snag the Tag, which is probably... There's a lot of room for being able to tell more story and content with that. But right now, it's basically there is a theme, and it's a game that runs where, starting at a certain date, people who have opted in or purchased the hider packs, we call it, can go out and hide tags in random places for people to find, and they will post those coordinates. So over the time period of the game, could be a month or 2, 3, whatever, those locations will be published randomly. So if you're a geocacher, you don't even have to necessarily be a geocacher, but if you are getting notifications of these, then you'd be the one to rush out for that GPS coordinate and try to find that tag that was hidden there. And they'll send you a high quality geocoin to go with that partner tag. But it's kind of like, that's almost the real treasure hunt now in geocaching. So in geocaching, when a new geocache is published, there's a lot of people that will rush out to be the first to find. And because geocaches are perpetual, they're intended to stay there. You sign the logbook and then you put it back. The Snag the Tag is like the true first to find. Now you go there, and if you're the first one there, you get to keep what's there. And I think for the most part, the Deaddrops in ARGs were like that. They weren't necessarily, unless they're intentionally intended to be there. A lot of the times in these games, when there's a new story element that comes up and, oh, there's a location we got to get to, or GPS coordinates, or a dead drop, everybody wanted to be there first. Because you want to be the one to uncover the new element of the story, or be the one to keep whatever was there. And, the other fascinating thing, people put a lot of time and money into these stories and the content. And sometimes, a dead drop could be anything from a piece of paper with a note, but it could be a really high quality product, or something that was created extremely unique and just really well crafted and creative. And I think that's what also tended to draw people into these dead drops, was because you're basically one of the first and only people to be able to lay your hands on this exclusive asset item for this game. And when it comes to things like movies and video games and these promotional stuff, it's huge. And so like snag the tags can start, but yeah, let the 9-inch nails USB keys. I think you mentioned the very first what was it called again? The unique item that's valuable. What was it called again?
Oh.
They're so popular now, well, growing in popularity and like millions of dollars worth.
If you're gonna say NFT, I'm hanging up right
Yes.
now.
I won't say it. You said it.
No, but yeah, I think for me, the exclusivity side of things of those first defines were never as much of the allure
Right.
as the stories of the experiences that would come out of it.
Yeah.
Why So Serious had one particular dead drop that they had a couple of them across the country that was famous for having a good present that was an amazing experience. Where for Why So Serious, this was the alternate reality game leading up to The Dark Knight.
Yep.
And a lot of the structure around this was the alternate reality game was putting together the moving pieces that led to the start of the movie. Mm-hmm. And so at one point, players were told, okay, call up this bakery and say you're picking up a package for Robin Banks. When the first person got there, they were given this cake that had a phone number written in icing on the cake. So what are you going to do now? You pull out your phone, you call the phone number on the cake, and the cake starts ringing. Because what they did is they took a burner phone, put it in a plastic bag, and then stuck it between the two layers of the cake before it had the icing put on it. So that the purpose of this stage of the experience was we need to get players a burner phone, but the experience of it was everybody hearing, oh my goodness, people got cakes that rang. And Why So Serious had a lot of these really extravagant drops. Of one of the later ones, I think, had you go to a bowling alley and pick up these bowling balls that I think had what looked like human skulls inside of it.
Something like that, I think, yeah.
It was an experience that got really over the top with the type of stuff that you might be picking up. Mm-hmm. But it was also that opportunity where it was less about the thing that you got and more about the experience you built out for the person who got it, which ties in with a lot of times where you're seeing those more location-specific alternate reality games, where for me, a lot of the exciting stuff is like a couple years back, well, over a decade ago, fine, I'm old. I did an experience called the Jejune Institute in San Francisco, where you're told, go to a physical location, nondescript office, and then go into that room and you're going to watch an indoctrination video. During the video, they tell you to reach into the drawer next to you, pull out a pencil and one of these cards that has really weird instructions telling you how to go through and escape the building that you're in, and then explore the surrounding areas to figure out what happened to this missing woman. And along that way, you'll pick up something, and this is one of my favorite beats of this Jejune experience, that at one point you're told to go to a store and buy this postcard for elsewhere for like $1.50 or something. Inside of that was a piece of paper that once you get to a specific location, this card, Jeff, I'm sorry for having you expand.
That's fine.
But this card, at the time you're told to pull out the card, is the location where you're standing. So that hole you're seeing cut out, you hold it up, and that is what you're seeing at the center of the hole. And so a lot of those experiences, you don't necessarily need to build out experiences so that it is a first defined and then it's gone. There are ways to build out these trails and experiences so that there is something for each person who comes across it, mm-hmm. that starts getting more in line with the geocaching mythos of, hey, when you get there, don't steal the cache, be a decent human being.
Yeah. Yeah. And replayability is one of the things that ARG creators were kind of toying with, trying to find ways to be able to create a story that, you know, it happens in real time, but if somebody wasn't there when it was playing out, can they actually have the same experience again sometime in the future? And geocaches are kind of have that ability, right? Because they're always there and you can go and find it. Single caches, like traditional caches, not necessarily as much because the cache is at the location, but you can create things like multi-stage caches, multi-caches, and mystery caches, and you can incorporate puzzles that exist on other websites. So you could, say, have your mystery cache published in one place, and you start and go to another website, and then that's where your whole experience starts. And then when you finish the experience or you solve it, you get the coordinates, and then you can go find the cache. And that is useful. And there are a number of caches that I've seen over the years that have really, really played that up. I mean, on the physical standpoint, there's people who create things like gadget caches, which is a similar sort of thing. It's the container at the coordinates, and it's basically a puzzle box. You get there, and you've got to solve the puzzle of the gadget that's in front of you in order to access the actual geocache or the logbook. So puzzle boxes are really popular right now as well. And then we've got the escape rooms, which is like a large-scale puzzle box where you're in the puzzle. And then you've got these other geocaches that are like actual experiences. And I know when I first started geocaching, there were a few, but there was one that I remember. It was Germany. They do everything huge scale in Germany, but they set it up so that you had to schedule a time to go for this geocache, because they had to set it up. They had the technology. They had like props and everything. They had to prepare for people to come in, and so you had to sign up. In some cases you had to pay because it costs money to run it. And to go through this experience in order to get to the end and find the cache. And it was all based on a narrative, a story, a mystery, and kind of a reverse escape room. You're trying to break in to get to the cache instead of trying to win by getting out. So this whole aspect of telling stories in the real world, I think like geocaching is another platform for being able to do this. And one of the things that people have had to deal with over the years, especially with ARGs and moving into geocaching, is the legalities. Because when alternate reality games started, that whole aspect of alternate reality, the story takes place in the real world. So if you are unraveling a story in the real world, you're a part of the story. So how, like, the experience is more fun when you get immersed in the story. And when people were playing around with this whole idea, it was brand new. There's no legal issues. There's no like insurance and whatnot. Like who pays for problems and what happens when somebody goes off the rails and does, like, nobody had dealt with that before. So eventually you got to the point where companies had to disclose that what you're doing right now, or this website is a fake website, it's not a real website, it's part of this game. Whereas in the early days, you'd come to a website, a company, you might think the company is real, and you might go searching for this company or go to the address that it's listed or start calling phone numbers because you don't know what's real and what's not. And are the people listed on as staff, are they real people or not? Like, you didn't have this issue of what's real and where you had the issue of what's real or what's not. And so you wanted to try to keep people in the game, but allow them to trust that what they were interacting with was part of the game and the story. And so with geocaching, one of the benefits to having it all on one website is there is the company Groundspeak that runs it, so they can kind of control the laws, like things like putting geocaches on private property. You are not allowed to do that. We will not, we can't, obviously they can't stop people from putting something there and trespassing themselves, but if they want to list it on geocaching.com, you have to abide by the guidelines. It has to be, anything that's listed here is trustworthy. So if you were to find a geocache listed there, then you know that it's safe to go find it legally. Or at least it should be. There are structures in place to be able to report things that are illegal and all that. But that is one of the benefits of having that central location, which alternate reality games, well, they kind of had to move into that. And it was kind of a contentious contentious movement, because now you're trying to immerse yourself in a story, but you get these blatant disclaimers saying this is not real, or this is fake, this is not a real website, or it belongs to this movie or something like that. And
well, and I am very much of the side that I am happy with the change that is made along those lines. When we started with the definitions side of things, we intimated we were going to be going this direction because I mentioned, okay, with geocaching, you have the website at the start of the experience. And that doesn't mean that responsibility goes away because this is a geocache, so anything else that happens afterwards is on them. It is possible where, Jeff, we joke about this a lot, but you almost killed people at multiple ARGs when we were going geocaching. Because as we're talking about those really famous caches, we went up to GCD on Mount Margaret for ARGFest Seattle. And I'm not what you would call in shape anymore. And that is quite a mountain. So just gradually, as we were going up, our group of 6 dwindled into 5 to 4 to 3 to 2. And I believe Jeff was the only one who actually got to the end of that geocache and touched it with his hands.
I think everybody else did make it eventually. I recall you guys, like, I got ahead of you, but then you kept going and you eventually got there. But it kind of spread out.
People dropped off along the way. There is still a certain amount of responsibility in terms of that was a safe path that you sent them on, but don't send people on crazy paths.
Right.
But with alternate reality games, it becomes a little bit more serious at the trailhead level, where the conversation is, if people find this and they think it's real, what are the consequences of that? Because for me, for a lot of these mystery games where it's someone is missing, if I seriously think that someone is missing and that there is this mysterious kidnapper out there, I am going to call the police. So as we're talking about immersion, it is immersion while knowing that you have entered a fictional story and knowing the bounds of that fictional story. Because this is kind of where you separate the hoax and trickery from this is a fun experience that we're all stepping into. And that challenge takes different forms, whichever corner of immersive you're talking about. But with Ingress, there's the fact of people, when they are playing Ingress, when they step in, had better know, no, there's not these crazy aliens going around making people play around with portals. Pretty simple scenario then. Like Pokemon Go, it's even easier of, I think the number of people on the planet who believe Pokemon are real is low enough that there's low risk there. But as you're dealing with immersive theater and saying, what does it look like when the theatrical show goes more out into the real world? And there's a wonderful experience in New York called Accomplice New York, where you're basically following up and meeting up with a bunch of mob members after they've pulled off a heist, and you're helping them out a little bit. For that construct, it is ridiculous enough, overacted enough, and obvious enough that even though one of the scenes is literally happening in front of the Brooklyn Bridge, nobody looks at people going through this and thinks, oh, I see what they're doing. Those are actual mob members trying to arrange their exit from the city. And the shape and nature of what that legal concern looks like is different depending on whether you're dealing with immersive theater, escape rooms, puzzle hunts, geocaching, alternate reality games. But it is a question that all of these spaces need to contend with, because one of the things that all of these areas have in common is they are stories that require people to act. And we have stories that require people to act. There's a certain responsibility to those people that you're keeping them safe.
And I remember with Batman: The Dark Knight, when the Joker was creating his mobs of mobs. Some of the activities had people in like downtown areas in, dressed up in Joker face and colors, like basically being a mob of Jokers, and anybody looking on, not knowing what they were doing. Like it was potentially very questionable. And you kind of got to hope that everybody who's participating knows what's going on, or knows, they're not there to cause problems. They are following instructions and there for the fun of revealing the narrative and following instructions, right? And so when people were creating those kinds of experiences, you have to think about that. what are people going to do, and what are people going to think of the people who are doing things as well. Because on one hand, you want to get more people looking at it and being curious. On the other hand, you don't want to make a negative impression. And it's the same thing with geocaching, because when you've got caches placed, you can't place it in private properties. There's certain things you can't do. Like one of the issues we have that has kind of changed over the years is people would place fake sprinklers. And those sprinklers would be the geocache. But people started tearing apart real sprinklers, thinking that they were fake sprinklers. And so there's certain guidelines, like you can't bury or break ground to find a geocache. Because if you think about it, even if you have, like, it is allowed if you have permission, but if you have permission to place a cache in an otherwise disallowed manner, you could get people thinking that that is okay. And if they don't know, then they could go somewhere else and think, oh, maybe it's buried, and start digging stuff up. Or if they think that it's on private property, but you didn't have to get permission or something, then they might go out and place a cache out on private property, not realizing that, well, that's illegal, you're trespassing. So you kind of do have to think about, well, Groundspeak, when they created geocaching, they had to think about what is the most general, safest manner to have this hobby be worldwide and most accessible to everybody. You almost have to go for the lowest common denominator. Public property, your own property, little things like that. So it's important to understand the guidelines and hope that everybody who participates is there on good terms, like not wanting to cause problems and stuff.
Now, and as you follow a lot of these experiences, whichever form it takes, you'll very quickly learn that people are incredibly creative at being wrong in the most amazing ways, which means part of what you're guarding against is what you don't actually know that you're guarding against. But also, so that we're not all doom and gloom, some things have actually become easier. So there's one experience that's near and dear to a lot of ARG folks' heart called Top Secret Dance-Off. Top Secret Dance-Off was not an alternate reality game, but it was an immersive experience where people were given dance challenges to go out in public, wear a mask, and do silly dances just for the joy of dancing. And at the time, it was really weird to see somebody doing a moonwalk with a video camera set up across a crosswalk. That was not normal. Luckily, now we have YouTube and TikTok, and the only confusion that might happen there is, oh, this person must be a celebrity. They must be famous on TikTok. Can I get their autograph? So in that sense, some things have improved. Yeah.
And even things like thinking about Pokemon Go, like there was a time when it was so popular just in my own neighborhood in the park nearby. And it got to the point where people were in crowds of like 10, 20 plus 30 people at 1, 2, 3 a.m. in the morning. And at one, because these things pop up at random times kind of throughout the 24 hours of the day. And eventually they had to get police out there calming people down, getting people to go home, like setting a curfew for the park because people were hanging out in these groups at these gyms and everything. And so like, even if it's super popular, they're not necessarily doing anything illegal. Yeah, there's still the issue of how people react and what they do.
Yeah. I love that one of the nostalgia memes out there is that people will refer to the summer of Pokemon Go as one of the last pure innocent moments of internet.
Well, and the other nice thing though, like, is that to a degree is the new side game that geocaching has called Adventure Labs, which initially started as just a creative way to build something for people to solve and get a smiley out of it. Usually gadget caches, they were at events, and for people to play with guidelines a little bit. What they couldn't do as a geocache, they could do as a lab cache. Now we've got Adventure Labs, so over the years it's kind of evolved to the point where now you've got this location-based game where you go to posted coordinates and you answer a question or something to enter a keyword, which was always the basis of it, enter a keyword to claim that as a find, as it were. And so this is kind of a container that's super flexible. At the very minimum, it could just be go read something off a sign, answer a question, and you get a smiley, a +1 for your geocache find count. But it's flexible enough that you can create a whole experience around it if you want. You can embed videos, media. You can link to websites if you want to, and build up. So more than just a paragraph of text, you can build up a whole story, get people going there to reveal and solve puzzles and stuff, and then come back to enter that final key phrase for the find. And some people are doing that. I'm kind of on the fence about Adventure Labs still right now. I don't hate them. They can be enjoyable, but there's so many of them, and so many of them are just a straightforward answer a question, keyword, get a find. So I'm like more super excited about the very creative ones. And one of the ones that I made was kind of the haunting of Boston Mills, which is a small local town. But there's a cemetery there, and it has a backstory, some mysteries about it. So I created an adventure lab about that, and it has people kind of going around respectfully within the cemetery to unravel the story as the locations go, as you go from place to place. And then so they tied that more into geocaching by allowing people to create a physical geocache as a bonus for completing the adventure lab. So I have a bonus cache. So once you finish the adventure lab itself, then you step into kind of chapter 2, and the story continues in another location. And you got to go through these steps and solve that part in order to find the geocache. So in a way, I'm kind of incorporating what is capable with an adventure lab as kind of an alternate reality game within that framework. And like with all this alternate reality games and geocaching, like that's kind of the combination that I'm most excited about, which is why I love this whole thing about creative storytelling and why I love having you on here to talk about it.
And this is the unprecedented opportunity, without spoiling any of the major moments within your Adventure Lab experience. Are there any narrative beats or little twists within that experience that you just think, oh, I'm so proud of myself for putting that out there? Without spoiling if things killing you, I know.
Well, there's a common theme, and it's visual in chapter 1, and maybe it'll get in your head for chapter 2.
Nice. And one of the neat things is alternate reality games do oftentimes take that Adventure Lab structure where it's following the beats through. One of the things that gets a little bit nuanced with that is a lot of times, because alternate reality games are collective gameplay, it becomes much less important that you personally are the one who did the thing, and it becomes much more focused on the community achieved the thing.
Yeah.
So
that agency is a huge factor.
Yeah. Adventure Lab isn't as much of a one-to-one there, but what I love to see is within the Puzzle Hunt and the Puzzle Hunt community, they're still very much locked in on this is something you do as an individual or as a group of like 6 people. And there's an experience out in Boston called the ASPMC that is a cryptid hunting experience that goes through Boston and is designed for families. That's one module in a series of puzzle hunts within that collective narrative universe of what happens if you've got the supernatural Audubon Society all of a sudden decides that, oh, we're going to modernize technology and get up to date and go online with the worst team of people to modernize and go online possible. And so a lot of the gameplay is literally, whoops, we screwed up our records. Can you help us put them together again? But that is one of those experiences where it very much is that geocaching style of let's tell a story by sending you through runarounds. At the massive major budget scale side of things, again, this is another area where the Puzzle Hunt community really latches onto the similarities there. You've got the MIT Mystery Hunt, which I've been going to for years, where the finale event of that is always this runaround where you are running around the campus from location to location, dropping by classrooms to do intricate physical puzzles, all sorts of crazy stuff, to get that final coin that says you are responsible for running the next year's hunt. But then you've also got smaller team events like there's a series of puzzle hunts that are collectively referred to as the game. The most recent installment of that was Miskatonic University, where it was teams of 6 to 8 just spending an entire night going through this, where one of the craziest stories from that was Mike Selinker, who was one of the head guys for Wired Decode when we were writing over there, did a bunch of the games. And for one of the years, they found this they found this mouse. And they're looking at this mouse thinking, how is a mouse a puzzle? One of the people on the team says, I think it might be chipped. And so they find an all-night veterinarian's clinic, take the mouse there and say, can you scan this mouse? I think it's chipped. Vet responds, what do you mean? If it's your mouse, shouldn't you know if it's chipped? And Mike replies, well, that's why we want to scan it. But that level of extravagance goes completely over the edge. The New York version of that is there's an experience called Midnight Madness that's coming back. This is actually, usually it's something that iBankers and tech millionaires play. This is the first year they're opening up to general population as long as you can afford to donate $30,000 to charity for your team of 6. But these massive, like, crazy budgets, sometimes you hear about helicopters being involved with these events, versions of what would it look like if you did that Adventure Lab experience for small groups, ramped it up to 11 and said, the world is our oyster in terms of budget.
Yeah. You just imagine what kind of stuff you can do. Mike Selinker, that's Mike Selinker. He made this this book, The Maze of Games. It is a book that's full of puzzles, and there's a meta puzzles. So solve the puzzles, and there's more puzzles to solve when you solve those puzzles. He makes loads of games, and he's like a puzzle guy himself. But Yankee White made a good point here as well. Oh, no, not that one. This one. Kind of like using binary in an ARG. Yes, it's a cipher, but come on, get a little more creative. You want to make...
Sorry, Yankee. The first comment was good, too.
Puzzles that are more than just puzzles, right? Because, like, whether it's binary or Sudokus or word searches, like, if you see, like, a geocache with just that on it, you solve it and then you're good to go. But the really interesting stuff is when you start weaving in narratives or tie the puzzle to something else or create something a little bit unique, more to discover.
Well, and since I mentioned the MIT Mystery Hunt, I've got sitting on my desk my all-time favorite physical puzzle from the Mystery Hunt, where we were given just a box with a deck of cards, and they were shuffled together. When this puzzle was called Marked Deck. When you ordered the cards properly, it would make a 3D image of this shape. Now,
awesome.
Luckily, we had teams of 60 people solving this puzzle, because when somebody on our team saw this, they said, oh, that's the image on the book cover of Neil Stephenson's Cryptonomicon. Nice thing about Cryptonomicon, in the book, they talk about this cipher called the Solitaire cipher, and the letters etched into the side of the deck, if you use the Solitaire cipher on the deck in the order that would make the picture, it would spell out instructions on how to solve the puzzle. No, there's no way in hell I could do this puzzle alone. But
it's just insane.
The level of creativity in doing those puzzles that can absolutely surprise you. Like, another puzzle that I loved is there was a virtual puzzle hunt called the Great Gotham Challenge. Great Gotham Challenge is actually the company that's going to be running this year's Midnight Madness that I mentioned. And the start of the experience was this card, welcome you into the experience. And then at the end of the channel, at the end of the challenge, they tell you, maybe warm up the card a little bit. And if you light your piece of paper on fire, don't burn it, just expose it to a little heat, another message would show up. So particularly given what you can do with transparency cards, with printer's ink. Jeff, earlier today, you were telling me that UV light is much more flexible than I ever would have imagined.
Yep.
That there's so much you can do with surprising people about how to display puzzles. For one particular experience called Ghost Post, it was for the Haunted Mansion at Disney Parks. And one of the things that you were given was a wedding invitation that if you put it in the freezer for 30 seconds, the ink would switch up and you would be holding the funeral announcement to the husband, and you learn, oh, that Duchess just got very wealthy. And so there's a lot of really cool storytelling stuff that you can do and puzzle stuff that you can do that goes beyond the standard, as I saw pop up in the comments before. Gotta love the Rot 13 shift cipher. You can love it, but there's so many things that you can do.
Yeah, Rot 13. Everybody knows Rot 13 in geocaching. All the hints. So you can provide a hint for a geocache to find it, and all the hints are automatically encoded in Rot 13, just so you don't mistakenly see any hint that you want it. So you have to just click a button and it'll flip it to, yeah. In the old days, you had to do it manually.
I've seen people start to share movie and TV spoilers on Twitter with Rot 13.
Yeah.
I love that on one level, but my favorite thing is we're friends with enough nerds that I've seen a couple people complain, I can read Rot 13 now, that's not helping.
Yep. Yeah, you mentioned the one thing about discovery, and we love to talk about this in geocaching. We kind of make fun of it, but everybody remembers to like first lamppost cache. Easy difficulty, wheelchair accessible, but most people don't realize that most lampposts in like a parking lot, they have a little bit of a cover over the base that covers, you know, access into wires and cables and stuff. Most of them, these lamp skirts can move and they can be lifted. They're not tied or not screwed down. They're loose. So often somebody will, you know, bring a new friend over who's never geocached before. They know where this cache is. It's really easy. It's like, okay, I'm going to stand back. You can, find it. Go for it. You can find it. And they're just walking around and looking up and down, examining. They can't find anything. What? There's nothing here. Where's the cache? And then at the moment they discover that skirt can move and shift up and it's right there, it's like their mind is blown. It's like the secret hidden world and everything. And so we kind of joke about it because quite often now you can give favorite points to caches that you really enjoy, that you think are worth it. So a lot of these high favorite point caches, after you've been geocaching for a few years, are just like run-of-the-mill. How does this have so many favorite points? But then you realize, oh, it's because so many people found this as their first cache. They're like, oh yeah, I got to favorite it not. So like that element of discovery, you know, whether it's finding a cache in a new way that you've never found before, or using a piece of technology or a tool that you never realized could be used that way. Like you said, with UV lights, or there's other things. I can't name how many new ways to make use of tools to solve a puzzle, but like there's that awesome element of surprise and discovery that is a huge draw to geocaching, and was one of the best things about alternate reality. With ARGs, it's like every time somebody in an ARG created something with a new puzzle or a new tool, new website, something like that, suddenly other people would copy that same idea in future puzzles and ARGs and stuff. It's like unveiling a new way to do things, and people would try to push that forward after that. And there's only so far you can go with geocaching, but like, yeah, that element is one of the things that I loved for both geocaching and alternate reality games.
Yeah, there's a certain playfulness to the back and forth that you see, where there was this one experience that's still very weird. I don't understand what was going on with it, called 10 Parcels. Mm-hmm. And 10 Parcels started where one of our mutual friends, JC Hutchins, was mailed one of the creepiest baby dolls that you would ever see, wrapped in 100-year-old newspaper. And I was fascinated and disturbed enough by this to write an article that was pretty much titled, "Please Don't Send Me a Baby in the Mail." The creators of that experience took me at my word, and they decided that the way of revealing what their website was and what their brand was rather than sending me a creepy baby doll, they sent me a severed plastic hand with Zodiac Killer letters on it that spelled out 10parcels.com. So in this case, they were very responsive of, I said, please no baby. They lived up to that promise, and now I need to explain to anybody who visits my apartment, why do I have the Zodiac Killer hand?
Yeah, when people, that's the other thing. Like, art can be so personalized as well. Like, you get to know people, and if you want them to be really excited, you can get them involved by, you know, doing something specifically for them, and then they'll get excited and involved and tell their friends and everything. And that was one of the main aspects of the creation of alternate reality games, is that building off the core group.
Yeah,
but
that actually transitions a little bit into, this is an area where geocaching also gets really personal, though, because one of the experiences that I've been following on the ARG that is so close to geocaching, it's not even funny, is the project I mentioned earlier called Mysterious Nashville. And Mysterious Nashville is a Nashville-specific location where it started off where they had these flyers with the tarot cards with the geo coordinates that led you to the first dead drop. And that was a finger quotes straightforward experience. But what I love about Mysterious Nashville is what they did for the second installment. The second installment, everybody who signed up for the mysteriouswebsite.com newsletter got sent instructions to go to this weird taxidermy store called Hail Dark Aesthetics in Nashville. And they were told, look for a cross-stitched piece of art that seems out of place, and then look behind it. And so people found this cross-stitched picture of a house and a place surrounded by taxidermy and all that stuff. And in the corner was the little Mysterious Nashville logo. When they flipped that painting over to the other side, it said, go to the cashier and ask for an envelope. They go to the cashier, ask for an envelope, and that directs them to go to the tallest man in Nashville. And that happens to be this massive mural in the city where they had what otherwise, if it was any other process, this would be a standard geocache. Because once you get to that location, the box itself says, there is a key hidden here, look for the out-of-place rock. They had a fake rock with a key inside. Use that to unlock it, and this is where we get pure geocaching. This was a find an artifact, take an artifact thing, where the players were asked to bring something with sentimental value of them to the location, and they were encouraged, you can take something from here in exchange for what you left there. That's one of the things I love about a lot of the videos and stories I see about geocaching is it gets to be that deeply personal experience because for a lot of the larger caches, you're literally leaving a piece of yourself there for other people, and you get to amass this collection of deeply personal, really cool trinkets that fit in boxes.
Well, and not only that, a lot of
just get
yeah, not only that, the oldest geocaches, a lot of the ones that are still around, if they still have the original logbooks, back then people would write their whole experience, not just a name and a date. They would actually write like a full page about their whole experience, getting there, what they found, what they saw in the cache and replaced and swapped out, that sort of thing. So there is that piece of history that's left over from people who have found it before.
Yeah. There was one moment in the Jejune Institute for the day one experience, which again, that was the San Francisco scavenger hunt experience, where you're led to an electrical box, and it's a fake electrical box. You slide it to this, I think it's a fake electrical box. I didn't die when I touched it. You slide it to the side and you see a message from the people running the game for the Jejune Institute. But players use that kind of as a message board of their own to do very logbook style activities of leaving messages, encouragement, and back and forth communications for the people who came later, which was all kinds of beautiful. You see less for alternate reality games, but for a lot of online puzzles, for a lot of immersive theater, you see people trying to carve out that space for players to just communicate and leave messages back and forth, even if they can't be there together at that time.
Yeah, and back in the early 2000s, we had a couple of websites that that we kind of formed our communities around ARGs as well. Like there was Unfiction and there's yours ARGN now. And going back to, you know, the whole thing about games and what's a game and not, like there were rules for participating in Unfiction because that was like a safe place. If people came there to talk about the alternate reality game, it was a safe place to talk about the game as a game. And people who created the games couldn't self-promote there. They couldn't have characters come in and interact with people. It was like that had to be there for people to, in a sense, be anchored to reality so you could know what was real and what wasn't and be able to build that community. And ARGN has been around for a long time, but yeah, Unfiction, we had such a big community. We're still around, but we're very spread out now.
Although, and I think this is one of the fascinating things about all of our spaces is there is not an ARG community. Mm-hmm. There are a handful of ARG communities that are dedicated to certain aspects of this that cross-pollinate, talk to each other, and get excited about other elements of the projects. But the people who are involved in the horror, web series, creepypasta side of things, a lot of what they're going for are very specific angles of what ARGs can be. Mm-hmm. You and I came in for a lot of the corporate ARGs, and what much of the current generation thumbs their nose up and says, "Oh, it's just promotions." We love that because it was getting the flexibility to do crazy stuff with that budget.
Yeah.
But then you've also got the web series, the immersive theater, the puzzle. There are so many elements and communities that cross-pollinate, both within ARGs, but also within this larger bucket of geocaching is kind of part of that general immersive active universe that I have no intention of coming up with a name for, but a lot of the excitements that we're chasing are similar, but it's also not one where it's necessarily there is a community and we can point to, yeah, all these people are one group.
Yeah, and grassroots was a big thing. Like we had those huge promotional campaigns, but there were people who, like, it was accessible to the point that somebody in their basement could create one of these for people, and depending on how good they are at creating and what kind of technology and quality and stuff they could create, you might not be able to tell what is a corporate promotion versus somebody in their basement running this for everybody.
People are really sick of me right now because when I talk about favorite alternate reality games, I just keep saying romantic comedy, must love robots. How can you go wrong with a cardboard robot costume trying to find love?
Yeah.
Just such a beautiful story, very indie project, but such high-low promotion for that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And those are the kind of things that you can incorporate into geocaches. Like a lot of people, they just want to find caches and they don't care. They just want the final coordinates and they'll go sign it so they can get the stats. But then there are people who really want to create and develop immersive and fun, entertaining stories or experiences around geocaches or series of geocaches. And I really want to see more people doing that. We have a number of vloggers, including myself, who cover geocaching and experiences and gadgets and stuff. And the geocaching vlogger is kind of our granddaddy of vloggers in this space. But he really focuses on really creative geocaches, like whether they're still just go find the cache, but there's something really interesting about it, or the people behind it, or the gadget, the fun of solving it. He's really entertaining to watch. So if you're interested in geocaches, then check out his channel. He focuses on those kinds of experiences. It's very rare that will just kind of, there's nothing really interesting about showing a geocache, right? It's all about the experience. For me doing it, I like to tend to focus on the journey, like the adventure behind going for a geocache. Probably mainly because we don't have a huge variety of like gadget caches or high quality, high production value caches that would make great for videos. So, my thing is kind of getting showing what geocaching can be like for the activity aspect, the exploration, again, discovery of what you didn't know was out there. Could be just around the corner. It could be a road trip away. There's a lot out there to discover. And so I tend to try to focus on that. And if we did have these huge production geocaches like those German ones that I wish I could participate in, then they would I'd so be on that for videos. But the geocaching space has that capability, has that flexibility. And my hope is that a lot of people would get creative and try to think outside the box, whether it comes to puzzles. Like I have in my hand the Perplex City. This campaign was a number of years ago, but this was a card series where every card is a different puzzle. Like it's collectible cards with numbered cards, and every one of them had puzzles. They're all rated with difficulties as well, and the points that you can earn by solving them and registering them on the website. But this was another one where, it's a whole bunch of puzzles, but there's an underlying story. There's a connection between them. And that was around for a while. I don't think they're, you said you searched for them. You can barely find them anymore.
Yeah. Well,
but,
Perplex City is out of the mix. Although we did have the recent wonderful news that actually promo number 3, Laura Hall was one of the people who helped finally find Satoshi, where one of the final unsolved cards from Perplex City was, here's this guy Satoshi. There's a picture of him on vacation. Find where he is. Mm-hmm. And he was a Japanese guy. Picture was a vacation, I think France or Germany. And over a decade later, using some of the more machine learning based image searches, people finally tracked down who Satoshi is, where he was, closed the door on that. Mm-hmm. But there actually is not as much of a puzzle-centric card game, but there's a company of folks that have a card game called DINN, D-I-N-N, that they're doing a narrative puzzle experience where each deck of the card is focusing on a different character in this missing person story, has really strong Twin Peaks vibes for it. But the puzzle element is each of these sets might have a meta puzzle that if you solve it will not just give you more insight into the underlying narrative of this card game, but will also give you control over where it goes by you can then say, this is what's happening for the person next. Mm-hmm. And that's a really interesting dynamic on the story side. I think it's been something that I've been slowly diving into to get a sense of kind of the shape of it. But really cool experimentation. Mm-hmm.
Well, one of the things that I loved about alternate reality games is that they're everywhere. I want to say they're everywhere because like we talk about promotions and grassroots and stuff, but I thought it'd be neat to highlight some of our favorite campaigns over the years. And the first one that I think, you see, because a lot of these stories, the people who tend to get involved are kind of sci-fi minded or fantasy minded. And a lot of people don't realize that well, obviously it doesn't have to be like that, but to reach a larger audience, it's got to be more generally, like the story, the genre would need to be more acceptable. Because we talk about things like Batman: The Dark Knight. That one was a big movie, but it's also fairly niche. But I don't think a lot of people realize that there was an alternate reality game for the 2008 Olympics.
Jeff, next thing you're going to tell me McDonald's was involved too?
I thought it'd be neat to show the trailer or the initial trailer for The Lost Ring, which was the alternate reality game that took place. What was it like? Was it a full year before the Olympics? I think it was.
Yeah, it was roundabouts. I think. Yeah. But it was the lead up because they needed to give us time to actually compete in an Olympic event with who was it? Ed Moses, who they pulled in as actual Olympian helping work on this project.
Oh, I can't remember.
There was some runner or someone. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we've got the trailer queued up here. See how well it plays. Oh, play. Oh, come on. What are you thinking? Try one more time. Experiencing interruptions? Yeah, just a bit. Oh, come on. You were playing just a second ago. Well, if it doesn't play, I'll add the link.
Yeah, Gritty is just eating up all your bandwidth right now. That's the problem.
We were working before. Let's try a refresh. There we go. No, maybe it's too much. I'll drop the link in the description. The idea behind this alternate reality game was that there are multiple dimensions or multiple realities, alternate realities and there was the Olympics. The history of the Olympics revealed that every time there's a synchronizing, I think it was, of all the realities, and it required special athletes to participate in a multi-dimensional Olympics, or else the universes, the parallel worlds, would collide and destroy themselves. So for that year leading up, we got to meet athletes from other dimensions who had to participate. We had to get them to participate in these Olympics, and we had to help out and kind of strengthen this bond, the connection between the realities, so that it would keep everything together. It was an interesting. Maybe you remember the story a little better, but trying to reduce it down to that number of words.
And I think for me, the thing that's interesting about The Lost Ring was much less about the story behind it and more about the execution, because this was an Olympics ARG, so they made it as each of the characters spoke a different language, and half of the puzzling through this game was getting people together so that everybody could understand what everybody was saying, which weirdly, and I love the crazy communities we interact with through alternate reality games, the Esperanto community came through as a massive win for us, because one of the languages featured in it was Esperanto. And as players were going through translating the texts and compiling this multilingual story, the Esperanto community and Esperanto as a language was kind of the linchpin of this international experience, because knowing what people were saying was half the battle there. But yeah, another alternate reality game that was really near and dear to my heart is this is another Disney one, The Optimist. That when Tomorrowland was coming out, there was this months-long alternate reality game leading up to the release that was diving into very personally the history of Disney. And a lot of the missions and tasks for this alternate reality game was kind of a historical site geocaching game, where at one point you're told, okay, go to, I think the restaurant's called Tam O'Shanter's, which was Walt Disney's favorite restaurant, and you're going to get a can of beans there. There was something inside the can of beans, that you're sitting at that table and you're seeing actual carvings that Disney staffers left on the table. That one of the highlights of this game was there's a secret club at Disney called Club 33 that you need to either be ridiculously connected or ridiculously wealthy to be able to get into. Players were let into Club 33 for a mission of this game and got to get access to something that nobody had seen, because the point of this game was, yes, there is a layer of fiction going on leading up to, if you've seen Tomorrowland, the movie, it's setting up, yes, there's a secret society of really brilliant people who are trying to make the world a better place. But also it was just this months-long homage to Disney Parks history, where deeply personal experience, really cool things. I've got a vinyl record over here that if you set it up normally will play It's a Small World After All. But with vinyl records, you have the advantage of, if you get the track slightly off, you can have a secret track on the audio that would sync up with the one of the Disney rides. Oh gosh, the Hall of Future, I want to say. I'm blanking out on which ride, but the audio track synced up with one of the Disney rides to tell you a story with this vinyl to real world mix up.
Right. Yeah.
That just gorgeous, heartfelt story.
Mm-hmm. I remember hearing about that. Yeah, because it was Disney. We can't really do that in Canada, so I was following along as I could as that was playing out. But I did get one of the pins for that one, the special limited. It was a Tomorrowland pin. Yeah.
Plus Ultra. Yeah. It was the Plus Ultra Tomorrowland pins. Mm. Another one of the recent ones that really took off, and one of the things that I love about alternate reality games is Jeff and I have been around the block for a while, so we keep going, oh, these ones from 10 years ago were amazing. Every 3 or 4 years, there's a different alternate reality game that people go, oh, that's the biggest one ever. Let's point to that. That's the end all and be all of ARGs. And everybody's got a different answer to that. One of the ones that I've been hearing recently is the biggest one was a Baskin-Robbins ARG. That Baskin-Robbins partnered with Stranger Things. And again, geocaching location specific. If you went to a Baskin-Robbins location, you would notice pretty much all of them in the United States, most of them in Canada, they would have this Russian code wheel put up on their ice cream sneeze guard screen. That for most people is like, oh, weird, code wheel. And then for one of the ice cream flavors, underneath the name of the flavor, there would be this Morse code that helped lead people into this weird BBS adventure where you're playing an online text adventure with other people to basically break into a secret facility that was gathering up and testing on demodogs. But it was an ice cream ARG, but it did the ice cream ARG so well.
You can use anything in an ARG. That's the thing. And that's part of the creativity, like finding how can we put this into a story and make it fun and immersive. But I mean, yeah, looking back at some of the ones, there was Hellboy 2, the movie, had a huge one as well. They kind of incorporated the portals into that realm, into the real world as part of the story. So we're trying to find these portals and close them and whatnot. The huge one that I loved was Tron, for Tron Legacy. Yeah. Flynn Lives was just enormous. That one, they had huge things set up for event-focused events, experiences, and the big one was in San Diego Comic-Con. They managed to get people running around the city, kind of tracking the lines like Tron through the city squares, trying to solve puzzles, and eventually leading to, they set up an actual Flynn's arcade, where you, just like in the movie, on the front side of it, you'd see the facade, but then you go in and then it had all the arcade games covered up like it was old and abandoned. But if you played certain games and you got high scores, you'd unlock the ability for that back wall to turn around, and everybody in the place would be ushered into the next section, which is all, future Tron, and they had the light cycle on display. They had like a club, music, dance. Like they went all out to help promote Tron Legacy. But the experience to get there was so unbelievably memorable. And it wasn't just story. It was, like we were saying earlier, agency. You interacted with characters. You solved puzzles. You were the one to get from stage to stage to solve and get to the end. And that was huge. Were you at that one? I can't remember.
That was another 42 Entertainment one, I think. But until Westworld ended up doing the actual full LARP village recreation of, you can go to Westworld, and if you want to get a barbershop haircut, you can get a barbershop haircut. If you want to hunt people down and throw people in jail, you can hunt people down and throw people in jail. Until that Westworld experience happened, Tron was really held up as, this is the craziest things have gotten.
Yeah.
But one of the other examples that really went very big on the sort of Comic-Con South by Southwest installation, which has been a very big theme both in the immersive theater and the ARG side of things, was Dexter did an ARG between series where you were chasing down a killer that the fans grew to love more than the detective chasing him. And that Dexter ARG started up with a scavenger hunt through the city of, I think that was a South by Southwest event that led to that was a Comic-Con one again, but it led to a staged kill room where you're walking into that kind of Dexter environment of, oh, there's the chair with all the blood splattered around it, you've got the plastic on the walls to make sure the cleanup is easy. And it was like, oh wow, no, this is very much a Dexter experience where, congratulations, we're standing in a room, somebody got killed.
Yeah,
too late with finger quotes, but no one got killed in that room.
This is not a game motion.
Yeah. But like even at the lighthearted side of things, True Blood did an alternate reality game leading up to the release of the show, where for HBO they turned the weekly summaries of what was going on in the ARG into promo materials for HBO of this show is coming out, and they released these couple dozen blood copy reports. They were saying, hey, this is going out, culminated in the release of actual blood copy energy drinks that you could buy at convenience stores.
Well, yeah, and another one of my favorites was like I was a huge fan of Terminator. I still love Terminator, but when Sarah Connor Chronicles was released, they also had a parallel alternate reality game, and that one pulled me in. I was a big fan of that one. And one of my favorite aspects of that one was that the game's story was that this company in our time had a camera that could take pictures into the future. And so they incorporated that whole thing. I mean, there's the drama with obviously the Terminator stuff, people coming from the future to stop things happening in the past. But this aspect of a future camera was really cool, because what the puppet masters, the people we call people who run alternate reality games, would do is they opened it up for people who are helping them in their story to send in photos of places, and we could see what the future held for that location. So if you sent in the photo to this fictional company, then it would process the image for an amount of time, and then you'd get back the future photo. And so we would see, like if you took a picture of your local park, you would get a post-apocalyptic version of that same photo from this camera. And I thought that was like super cool because it's so flexible. You could send in a picture of anything, and theoretically you could get back a picture of a post-apoc, what the place looked like after nukes and everything went off. And what was so cool about that was the people running the ARG, they were just taking those photos and obviously doing up artistically, like on the fly, thinking, okay, how would this look in the future, and then applying a whole bunch of effects and doing some artistry and creative work, and then sending that back as the camera, as a photo from the camera. I thought that was just like so super awesome.
Yeah. That was another game that was also really good for the post-game summaries, because they ended up packaging up videos summarizing a lot of the events and then sharing those on Cory Doctorow's boingboing.net. So that was another one where it was really good. Right now we've got a lot of YouTube creators who are going crazy documenting a lot of these stories that have been in pieces. True Blood, Sarah Connor Chronicles, those were two games that were really good at packaging those up for people who were casually watching without having to wait a decade for people to say, oh wow, let's actually back up and do that.
Yeah, and that brings up another point about canonicity of stuff, because if you're creating a story in an alternate reality game for an existing property, I mean, this was huge with Halo, because when I Love Bees came out, it was a self-contained alternate reality game that took place in the Halo universe, but then there was like it was creating a canonized history of 2004, And so the question was, did this stuff actually happen in the Halo universe? Like, because a character from the future was interacting with people 500 years earlier. So it's part of the Halo story, like it's part of the canon.
Yeah.
So there was that whole controversy of should they incorporate the events of I Love Bees, most likely without the human people, like real world people, but the events of I Love Bees into the actual canon of Halo. And I think it took a long time, but eventually they kind of brought it generally into the Halo lore. But
yeah, and you see people addressing that a lot more head on recently, where recently is still going to be a scale of years. But one of my favorite examples of a game that started directly in the TV show is for the TV show Numbers, there was an episode called Primacy, where the trailhead leading into an alternate reality game was actually in the background of that episode. And the ARG was in canon telling what happens to those characters, kind of going full circle. But then you also have recently with the Jejun Institute, which we've talked about a couple times before, ended up getting made into a fictional TV series called Dispatches from Elsewhere. And Dispatches from Elsewhere gave people things to do leading up to the show coming out and things to do while the show was coming out, until the final episode literally pulled some of those people into the show.
Yeah.
So that a lot of times now you're actually seeing that as a perk of the experience of, yes, sometimes the creators say, whoa, hands off, you can only play in these corners. But other times you see much more direct integration where they're actively not just looking to make it part of canon, but they are looking to make the player's role part of canon.
Yeah, and it also just made me realize another thing as well, because in geocaching, we call people who don't know about geocaching muggles. So just like Harry Potter, they're the people who don't know about this hidden world. So there's like, as soon as you discover what geocaching is and you realize that there's this hidden world of hidden containers that you can go searching and it's worldwide, you're no longer a muggle. So it's like geocaching is like a hidden layer underneath the real world. And when it comes to alternate reality games, for some of these things that happen, say for TV shows where the alternate reality game is playing out as the TV show is unfolding, people might just be watching the TV show and it's self-contained, you can enjoy the show, but you might not realize that there is a story happening underneath all of that, that you may not know that it's there unless you go digging, or something in an episode seems kind of odd, or there's a website or a URL or something, and then you curiously pump it into your browser and check it out, or make a phone call or something, and then wait a second, this isn't just a TV show. There's more going on here, and it kind of like that alternate reality game brings you into that hidden layer. You could say that you're no longer a muggle if you're following an alternate reality game that is playing out in real time with a TV show. And so like that's another parallel that I just realized. There's like that muggleness with alternate reality games as well.
Yeah, Jeff Gomez was one of the big figures on the transmedia side of things, and one of the areas that he traces back with transmedia storytelling of what makes it so powerful is that idea of the insider knowledge and going one level deeper, where his example he always goes back to Godzilla, and he grew up just devouring anything Godzilla lore. And so that part of his way of relating with people and bonding with them over shows was having those conversations of, did you know that, or have you seen? And one of the big trends you're seeing in video games, TV, movies, all over the place, particularly as it's displaying on YouTube, is that discussion of lore. And so like with WandaVision, I've watched as much lore discussions of WandaVision as I've watched WandaVision itself. All of those conversations were, for the most part, within the text itself of what was happening in WandaVision. The cool thing about alternate reality games, transmedia storytelling, unfiction, whichever version you're going for, is it's taking that core story of, let's dive into that story and figure out what's going on. And it's saying, and you might not be limited to the TV show for how you're doing that digging. If you see a phone number, maybe call the phone number. If you see a website, maybe go to the website. If you see an address, check with other people before you go to the address. But these are all questions to ask of, how far down the rabbit hole do you go? And yes, within alternate reality games, just as you've got the Harry Potter analogy with Muggles, we go way too deep into Alice in Wonderland. It's frankly, I'm surprised we don't see more Alice in Wonderland ARGs, given how much it's used as a metaphor for literally everything.
Yeah. How far down the rabbit hole do you want to go? The Matrix.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's an ARG for the Matrix 4 yet. That was supposed to be released already.
Yeah, well, because that Matrix is another one of those big examples where people will turn to that discussion of transmedia, because seeing the movies is one experience, going that next level, checking out the Animatrix for those short stories, playing the video game, which apparently told you more about the series than the movies itself. Those add levels, where part of the challenge with that, when you're going for the Matrix or Heroes route, is making sure that just seeing one of the experience is enough, because if you're forcing people to do everything, like that makes a much harder experience if it becomes mandatory that you do everything as opposed to additive.
Yankee White made a good point. So many different names still after all these years. This whole space is so flexible and creative, and technology versus nature and outside. It's like everybody was trying to come up with some way to frame it, and that's why we had so many different names over the years. And it's such a concept, a vague concept, that you just kind of pick something and run with it. Really, that's what it ended up being. A couple others I just wanted to mention as well. Transformers. Was it the first Transformers, or was it one of the Transformers? They had one called Sector 7. Sector 7 showed up in the movie.
Yeah.
But we were like citing actual Transformers in the real world, and there was the mystery of what Sector 7 was and what they were doing and all that stuff. That was a really cool one. Windows Vista had an ARG. That's always a fun one to laugh about. The operating system. but it was so well produced. Like, it doesn't seem like something that should have an ARG, but like there were puzzles. It was all over the place. One of the best parts about that one, I thought, was that they used projections, like building painting. I think whatever you called it was kind of popular at the time. It was a growing phenomenon, an artistic medium, where you'd actually get, like, the artist would get the shape and structure of a building and then create a projection that would be in line with that, like somehow use the structure as the art.
Beyond that, the core of that experience was a whole Bellagio fountain show.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, projecting video and puzzles onto, like, vague, weird shapes and stuff onto the Bellagio fountain. If you were driving or walking through Vegas at the time that happened, you're like, what the heck is going on?
Yeah.
But
Dungeons and Dragons did an alternate reality game that actually led up to the release of one of their modules. I freaking loved that one because the core of the story is there's this storyteller within the Forgotten Realms universe called Volo. And according to the narrative, he got pulled into our world. And in the Dungeons and Dragons universe, he does reviews of places. So, of course, the launch of the experience was a bunch of Yelp reviews from a guy we later find out is Volo, where the Yelp reviews, if you go to the game stores reviewed in the Yelp review and then say the location from the game world that was hidden in the review, they would give you a USB drive. So, like, for the Texas location, it was in the dusty southern clime of the city of Spring. Beyond the dungeon, the store, is like an oasis on the water deep in the heart of Texas. So you go there, say water deep, USB drive, which just brilliant puzzle, but such brilliant framing because you took a character who, yes, of course, he would be the annoying Yelp reviewer.
Tigger mentions there was Cloverfield had an ARG as well.
Yeah, a couple of them.
Yep, and Rowan mentioned the Audi. Audi had an ARG.
Yeah.
That was what was that? Was that two? No, that was 2000. That was before I started. 2002
That was
or 1 or
before.
something.
It was like 2003 or 2004, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Project Icefly. That was the 5-gum ARG. If you watched from the beginning, the intro contains some of the video from that. I was coming up with an intro. I was telling Michael, it's like this promotional trailer for the 5-gum ARG is like, it's the 5 senses, but that whole first section is just so applicable to everything that makes us love things like ARGs and geocaching and discovery and all that. So I had to throw that in there. Not sponsored by 5-gum. Yankee White says there is where did it go? Hyped for Cloverfield sequel ARG.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a movie in the mythos, I think. I'm not sure if it's technically a sequel. I can't remember. I read something about that.
The Cloverfield is one of the rare occasions where the ARGs are more logical than trying to piece together the actual movie lore. That I love them. They are very confusing sometimes. For me, 12 Cloverfield Lane was absolute favorite alternate reality game. They did a wonderful job on that one.
Yeah, that was a fun one to follow. Yeah, and if you're not watching live, then comment. If you've followed an ARG or played an ARG, then comment below to the video and let us know, because we love to reminisce over these things. That's one of the things about ARGs. We were saying about replayability. Because these generally are play once live experiences, a lot of people who are involved have these unique memories that will never happen again. And so replayability is something that people have been wanting to try to master, to be able to provide these same experiences over and over again for people coming into it.
Although I actually have a recommendation along those lines, because Allison Smith is a company, actually, I believe they're based out of Toronto, that focuses on, they do a lot of video game ARGs. So they worked on the alternate reality game for No Man's Sky. They worked on the alternate reality game for Bloodlines that was a vampire dating site, which cracked me up. But their core product is actually this replayable single-player alternate reality game called The Black Watchman. And The Black Watchman is a series of a couple dozen individual missions where, yes, they're puzzly, but some of the puzzles start trending towards social engineering, where you're sent to a fictional website and you need to flirt with the person to get some information, and you need to go, what is this person like? And so it's a really good way of, no, you don't get the community aspects of alternate reality games through Black Watchman as much. There are some community elements later on, but it gives you the feeling of puzzle and story and discovery and immersion while still keeping it contained enough that it feels safe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like all of these things have evolved over the years. Like I said, it really started when location-based gaming was burst open for people to use on their handheld devices. When things started in 2000, we got geocaching, we got Deaddrops, we got location-based stories, games. All this stuff happened and improved and increased and got super creative as the years went on. And so there's just something about making use of the real world. And I think that's why geocaching is catching on, because it's fun for people who have a technical side, like techie people. If they love technology, you can have it in your hand, and you may not even care about nature, but you still love the fact that you're getting out there using cool technology. There's people who love solving puzzles that like nobody would be able to solve these puzzles except people who think like them. Right. And but then
specifically puzzle hunt, mystery hunt stuff, I go there with the intention of, I am going to be the dumbest guy in the room, and I want to embrace being the dumbest guy in the room.
Yeah. And then we've got people who just love nature. And the fact that they've got technology in their hand, it's like an extension of their body. They don't necessarily know how it works or care how it works, just that it does. And they just want to get out and enjoy nature. And so geocaching is like a cross-section of both of those, like a combination of both of those, and which is why it's so popular and so accessible. It can attract so many people. And then we got alternate reality games where you really incorporate storytelling into it. whether it's a unique self-contained thing or it's combined and expanding on an existing platform, medium, whatever, and you bring people in that, and it's not intended to be something fundamentally perpetual. Geocaching, a cache stays out there, it's owned by somebody, and it theoretically never goes away. But ARGs are like play once, experience it, and you have that entertainment. And but pretty much all of it is because of location-based technology being made accessible to everybody. And I mean, it'll be awesome to see how it continues on in the future. But I mean, well, now we've got Starlink going around with those creepy UFOs that are flying around the Earth. But making use of this kind of technology and human creativity to create experiences that people can remember, whether it's replayable or not as important. But that's the fun. Like, that's what I've loved about geocaching and alternate reality games. That's my draw.
Yeah. Well, and for me, it's very similar where a lot of the times when you saw both of us grinning like idiots during this discussion were those moments of talking about the surprise and delight of who the heck would think to put a phone in a cake? Or what do you mean you gave me a piece of paper that I need to set on fire? Why would you do that? Yeah. Or wait, so you're telling me go into a nondescript office and then sneak out of there, but it's intentional? All of these are these delightful surprises of you would never think to do it on your own, but when you're going through it, you think, oh, this is really special. This is really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And like we said before, that agency, the ability to be involved with the progression from beginning to end, it gives you like a sense of ownership. And in geocaching, it's not as much because, again, it has to be replayable and you know that everything is recreated and you could do it over and over again, but you still have that ability to be there from the beginning to the end and enjoy the whole experience. Hopefully. That can move into a whole other topic about cheating, as it were, just going to get the coordinates instead of doing the experience as the owner intended. But ideally, cache owners will create experiences for people to enjoy, whether it's trying to solve a puzzle box or creating a large escape room style experience. Escape rooms is a whole other thing we didn't even dive into yet. That's something that I've found everybody can enjoy, whether you're a geocacher or an ARGer or don't even know a thing about either of them. Escape rooms are like almost another center point to both of those subjects. And geocachers have created mini escape rooms for larger events. So like geocaching themed, not hugely expensive stuff, but like in some of these mega events, they might set up a room for people to come in and work together as geocachers and trying to solve and get it just for the fun of it. So I mean, it's definitely there for people who love puzzles.
Well, and I think we have been using definitions a lot during this, but I think for all of our disciplines, one of the things that are the most exciting is seeing that mix and match and seeing the remix of all of these disciplines to create things that are mergers. I went to a LARP a couple of years ago that had an escape room as one of the missions for it. And then there was a geocaching element of there are 20 artifacts scattered across the campus that we were doing it at that we needed to collect to do a thing. And so this is something where they are discrete things in and of themselves, but also steal, borrow, leverage. These are things that the audiences are looking to scratch similar itches, so you can use similar areas from different disciplines to make really cool stuff.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And Yankovic makes an excellent point. The real adventure is the friends made along the way. It seems kind of cliche because everybody's going to say that about whatever they love if there's other people involved. But I mean, it's so true within the geocaching community. Everybody can be so tightly knit. I mean, there can be drama sometimes, but we'll always say this is like the best community ever. But then you get alternate reality games. It's like, it's the best community ever. Everybody's got the best community ever. Right? It's relationships, or as we like to say sometimes, people, man, people. It's all about the people. There can be solo experiences and games and stuff, but the best experiences are the ones that you share with friends, that you share with people. And yeah, that's a huge takeaway for both of these entertainment spaces. So we've got a couple of giveaways still to do. If you haven't yet, you check down in that little ticker at the bottom there, the live chat giveaway for the book from Laura Hall. Let's see if I can get that back up. Oh, he's got it up there. Planning Your Escape. Ooh, it's even transparent and glowing. From Laura Hall.
We have a very cheap webcam.
All about escape rooms, puzzle solving, the history of stuff that's come up to these kinds of immersive experiences and how they've grown. We're giving that one away. So if you haven't yet, make sure you get that hashtag in the chat for hashtag no escape for the draw. But first, I'm going to give away a couple of path tags. You know, we like to call in alternate reality games, we have Deaddrops where we like to sometimes give away things that progress story. But in geocaching, we kind of do that naturally. We've got little coins, sometimes full geo coins, and sometimes these little collectible path tags. But for a Facebook group called Excellent Geocaching Adventures, which I run, where hopefully people can just share their fun, adventurous geocaching activities, I'm giving away a path tag every month to people who participate and share their adventures. And so, of the people who have participated and got the most votes, for the first time, I didn't think it would happen, but there is a tie. So I'm going to give one to both of you for sharing. So both of you are getting a path tag. Jen Veach and Patrick Farabee. Congratulations. We'll be in touch, and you guys will be getting the path tag. But if we move on to the big book giveaway, we have a special giveaway tool. Oops, nope. This is the one. Hashtag no escape. We have entries. Get in now. I'm going to do a draw. 3, 2, 1, too late. Go. We have who's getting the book? Who's getting the book? Just keeps going. Who's getting it? Donovan Durr is getting the book. Congratulations. We'll contact you in some manner. And you will have won that book. So if you haven't looked at it yet, there will be links in the description so you can check it out and find wherever you can buy it from. Do you know where it's going to be sold?
Yes, major retailers, and if you go to the Simon & Schuster link that was provided, it will give you the routing. So if you wanted to get it at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, bookshop.org, IndieBound, I'm sure there's other, BAM I think is one of the ones listed. There are a lot of retailers, and it should be in stores at retailers near you. If it is not, you can request it.
Awesome. We'll add links when they come available.
The Simon & Schuster link has all of the links aggregated for the different places that you can get online, and then in stores is going to be as stores pick it up.
Awesome. Okay, good. Yeah, we don't want to miss out on that. So I guess on that note, this was like seriously awesome to be able to chat for, how long is it? 2 hours now.
Yeah.
God, yeah, there's so much to talk about.
It's been a while.
Yeah, I'll have to go through this, and I'll make sure to try to add some chapter breakages in the YouTube so we can jump around between topics. But yeah, be sure to check out the comments, the description below for links and products and whatnot. And comment below with your thoughts. If you're a geocacher and ARGer, what are your favorite types of experiences? And if you participated in any alternate reality games, please share. We'd love to hear them. Like I said, it's nostalgic to be able to go back and think about these things. And if you like this, if you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up. That lets me know, and it helps make the video a little more prominent so that other people can also check it out. And hopefully you've learned some stuff. If you love puzzles, maybe there'll be some ideas here. I think we mentioned a number of resources you can use to come up with ideas. And even in geocaching, we are allowed to make use of existing properties to a degree, as long as you're not trying to sell stuff. So you can tell like fan-based stories in your geocaches if you want to. Yeah, if you check out some of your favorite TV shows, there might be an alternate reality game for that too. But mainly, check out argn.com, because if there is an ARG, he's going to be reporting it. It'll be on Twitter.
No problem promises for full coverage, although one thing that I will do as a flag of currently running alternate reality game, really interesting. There's an Instagram-centric alternate reality game called Pictures of Gwen going on. The website for that is picturesofgwen.com, and they are gearing up for Something is Happening Tomorrow. The thing that's interesting about it is, yes, they've got the free online version of picturesofgwen.com, but they're also doing these monthly optional mailers that you can go through for this month's, and they sent me a review copy. It's a zine from Gwen that you can read through, a bunch of other stuff, and these absolutely gorgeous tarot cards that, from what I understand of the logos, might actually be custom to the game. But really interesting experience from what I've seen so far. Gorgeous art, and one of those more indie games where you're getting the more personal touch of not having to fight through tens of thousands of people to be noticed by senpai.
Awesome. Yeah, so lots of stuff to look at, lots of stuff to think about. As well, thank you to all the patrons who help Cache the Line, who support. There's a link down there if you want to check it out, patreon.com/cachetheline. And all of your support is appreciated. All the patrons who help, you are appreciated. And you make all this possible. Like, seriously, I'd never imagined this would be what I'd be doing. So thank you, everybody. Thanks for watching. Everybody in chat as well. And yeah, as Mrs. Weaver says, 11 p.m. here, so spot on for bedtime. Yeah, she's in Australia, I believe it is. It's 6 p.m. here, and it's still light outside, so it still feels early, and yet it's so late. But on that note, thank you all you ARGers who are in chat, and all you geocachers as well. And as always, we'll see you in the next video. Happy caching and excellent adventuring.